Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What's up? Happy football season. Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast summer sessions. I'm Jeff Sharon, joined by Eric Lopez. Can you believe it's football season in July, Lopez?
Oh, I can't get here fast enough. I was pleased. I've never been so excited to see I couldn't believe. I never thought I'd be excited about seeing football players eating lobster, but that's what this week was.
Dude, it is mid-July, man. We're recording this on Wednesday, July the 19th, and the first game is what? August 26th, is it?
No, what do you get your calendar correct there, sir?
No, I'm telling you. Well, I think USF is playing. They're actually opening the football season the week before we do, right? So
yeah,
there will be football on television.
Yeah, that doesn't count. I mean, they're playing San Jose State. We know the following week.
Tell that to them in San Jose State.
Anyway, will.
Well, the reason why we start off here with this summer session is it's football. Well, we just wrapped up football media days at the American Athletic Conference. It took place up in Newport, Rhode Island. And our guest who we're talking to on this summer session is Hali Oughton from the American Athletic Conference. We'll get to Hali in just a second. But Lopez, what were your first quick impressions of the two-day media day event?
Well, I mean, it was kind of what you expected. A lot of positivity, obviously, a lot of new faces. That's what jumped out. I mean, there's so many new head coaches in this league. They're like, wait a minute, who's that? Oh, wait, he's there now. Okay.
Everyone's excited to get started playing, and we have a competitive team this year, and the offense has improved, and the defense has improved, and, all that.
Yeah, there's no question about that. The thing that jumps out to me, at least on paper right now, going into the season, is that the Western Division in the American is absolutely loaded. And as watching the coverage, and I'm sure we'll talk to Hali about it, I don't think there's a consensus in the West. Like Memphis was the preseason pick at the end of the day, but I mean, people were trying to make cases for Houston. People are trying to make cases for SMU. People are trying to make cases for Houston. I mean, Tulsa. I mean, it's a stacked deal, and it's very strong. And whereas the East, I think the consensus is there's a lot of uncertainty and unknowns because of all the new faces in the coaching ranks that you have in the Eastern side. I mean, Scott Frost now is a veteran in the Eastern Division.
Right. All of a sudden, Scott Frost is the grizzled old vet in the East,
right? With
all the new head coaches in the East Division. And, and not just, the new head coaches, but the quality of the coaches, I thought. We obviously Scott Frost speaks for himself, but we talked about, for example, Luke Fickell in Cincinnati, Scotty Montgomery at ECU, Randy Edsel's back at UConn, and Charlie Strong takes over at USF. I mean, this is we've talked about this before about how good the coaching was in the state of Florida. I think the coaching got better in the American this year, even though there were a number of departures. I think there were quite a few upgrades. What say you?
I think it depends on the situation. I think Connecticut, you could argue, has. I mean, Randy Edsel took Connecticut to a BCS bowl game when he was there the first time around.
Kind of put UConn football on the map from at least in the Division I FBS era. I mean, they had some success when they were FCS, but yeah, Randy Edsel kind of put them on the map at the top level.
Agreed. So I definitely think that they upgraded there. I think Luke Fickell brings new energy to Cincinnati. I think, let's be honest, with Tommy Tuberville the last couple of years, you got a sense that thing was kind of running dry. There was a team that just either underachieved, depending on your perspective, either underachieved based on what people expected from their roster, or it just kind of faded apart. So I'm kind of curious with Luke Fickell. with the new blood there, what he can bring in there at Cincinnati. Jeff Collins, obviously, that's going to be interesting. With Matt Rule, tough spot, new quarterback. We know this about Jeff Collins. He'll have a good defense ready to go with Temple. Interesting to see how their offense looks with Matt Rule now at Baylor. Major Applewhite replacing Tom Herman. That'll be interesting. I feel like, in a way, Houston maybe now is under the radar because of that coaching change. They still got a lot of talent. In fact, I still think they got the best football player in the conference, and Ed Oliver, the defensive lineman at Houston. They could have Kyle Allen as their quarterback. Remember the transfer from A&M. So I think Houston's maybe all of a sudden could be a sleeper. And then Charlie Strong, obviously, at South Florida. And this is, I know, where there's a lot of the back and forth on this. I know you think they've upgraded there. I personally don't. I think Willie Taggart, it'll be interesting to see if Quentin Flowers and USF and their offense will be as good without Willie Taggart, which people forget was the play caller for that offense.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated to see, because all the expectations are on USF. You know, they were the overwhelming favorite to win the East, the overwhelming favorite to win the conference. And that will be interesting, because with that comes be the target. And I found it interesting, Jeff. Scott Frost making the comments about he's tired of people patting him in the back for going 6-6. I think, in a way, UCF, I think he likes where people have it, where everybody's picking USF. Everybody's like, oh, UCF, you had a great 6-6 year, they're right there in that second spot. And I think he likes where they're at. I think he likes the fact that people are just kind of conceding things to USF, because I think he could use that to his players as motivation. That's the impression that I got. And I think they're going to have I think the players coming out of that, he'll use that to give the players motivation, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder going to the year that, hey, they're picked. People think that you're a 6-6 team only. Let's show them that you're better than that. Let's show that you can compete for the conference title. So that was my takeaway from kind of reading between the lines and watching the coverage this week.
I'm with you on that. The best place to sort of fly is below the radar, and we know that Charlie Strong is going to come into USF with a lot of flash, and that's fine. Okay, we'll kind of stay up here and just kind of roll through our schedule and see what happens the rest of the way. So let's get to Hali, because she was the point guard of the entire Media Day show for the American Athletic Conference and the American Digital Network, and she was very kind enough to spend some time with us, sort of debriefing off of Media Day and kind of give us her impressions of everything that she saw and reported on from Newport, Rhode Island. So here is our interview with Hali Oughton. Joining us now, fresh off the hot seat up in Newport, Rhode Island, reporter and host of the American Athletic Conference and the American Digital Network, a good friend of ours from pretty much anything American Athletic Conference related. She knows about it and can tell you all about it. Hali Oughton joins us once again. Hali, how are you now that media days are all finished up?
I'm recovering, but it was such a fun couple of days. I'm kind of sad that it's over.
What was the most fun part?
You know what? I think the funniest part is for sure on Monday night, watching all the student athletes eat the lobsters. And I think the greatest thing is, so many of these guys have never actually gone through the cracking process of eating the lobster. So that was a blast. And we actually featured that on our live show on Monday night. We had the chef walk some of the players through that, and it was pretty funny to watch. But then imagine that. And hey, you guys can probably you guys probably saw this on social media, but the UCF guys got a little bit competitive with the lobsters, and they were setting lobster eating records. So that was pretty entertaining. But I think it's just overall seeing everybody have such a fun time, because outside of the football side and the media day, while we're actually all there, I think everyone just really enjoys themselves. So it's nice to see all of that.
Well, and the highlight from that live show is you were doing interviews, and you broke a big story where Mr. Hancock there is allergic to the seafood. You saved a life, Hali. You saved a life.
He's come up with the latest and greatest combination. I think he said corn on the cob and ice cream.
Wait, he's allergic to corn on the cob and ice cream, or he's
no. he's allergic to shellfish,
Oh, okay.
so he couldn't eat the lobster. So he was headed for corn on the cob and ice cream. So pretty interesting pairing, but if Bill Hancock's doing it, then I think it's worth trying because,
Okay.
I mean, he's a smart guy.
Note to self, come December, Bill Hancock is allergic to shellfish. Okay. All right.
which was fantastic, because as I'm watching this and Haley and Andy Katz are talking to him, they're showing, you see footage in the background of, people looking at the lobster and getting ready for seafood. And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of allergic. I'm like, wow, this is an awkward place to be at.
Right. That's kind of the worst place in the world to be if you're allergic to seafood. If you're allergic to shellfish, is in Newport, Rhode Island, where they're serving lobsters by the dozen, for crying out loud.
You know what, though? What they don't tell you is that that they're also serving steak and sausage and cornbread and all these other awesome foods. So if you don't like seafood, you will not starve.
Okay, good. No, that's
good to know now. Okay, that now changes my mind in future.
Yeah. Not that we don't like lobster. It's just that's also fun, surf and turf. All right, let's talk a little football while we have the chance. All right, so it's mid-July, football in July. Here we go. Training camp's right around the corner. The American Athletic Conference preseason poll is out, and for our purposes, UCF picked second in the East behind USF. Temple, Cincinnati, East Carolina, UConn round out the East. In the West, Memphis has been picked as the favorite, followed by Houston, Navy, Tulsa, SMU, Tulane. A little bit surprised at the fact that Temple dropped that much, and also that Houston was not picked as a favorite in the West. Everyone seems to be super, super high on Memphis. From your perspective, how did the poll shake out from what you're saying? What do you think was some of the reasoning behind how everything kind of shook out?
Yeah, you know what? I don't even know, I guess, where to start. And I think that's a really good thing because I think it says how competitive this league is going to be this year. And I guess just looking at the East, USF, obviously the overwhelming favorite on paper. They have all the tools to do it. So I don't think anybody was really surprised there. For UCF to come in second, I think that really shows the belief that the media, because they're the ones who are voting, have the belief in Scott Frost and what he was able to do in just year one and the talent that's returning there. But ironically enough, on both sides of the poll, you have last year's divisional champions both coming in at third. And I think the uncertainty surrounding Temple is obviously at the quarterback situation. So it's tough to understand where a program is at when you haven't seen their quarterback. And I think we saw that translate into Tulsa being ranked where they are, because that's a 10-win team from last year, and they're coming in at number 4. So I think that has to do with some uncertainty regarding Temple. But looking at the West, I mean, all the media members that I spoke to on Monday leading up to the event, I didn't get the sense that anybody really voted the same way. And it was like some people had SMU near the top. Some people had, Houston winning it. It was all over the place. And I think probably the most surprising thing for me, and this has actually just been the past couple of years, is Navy. And Navy, they joined the conference a couple years ago, and they have yet to lose a West Division title, yet they've never been picked to win it. And until they do otherwise, I just have a hard time believing that they're not going to be up in the mix somewhere near the top. And so Coach Ken, I mean, they just find a way to win, and they have some relentless guys on that team, but year in and year out, they're not getting that respect. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the biggest surprise for me, but the West Division really stands out this year. I think that, top to bottom, it's going to be a really tough slate of games for the guys competing in the West, especially. And not to say that the East isn't competitive. I just think there's a lot more uncertainty surrounding it. And that's because 4 of the 5 new head coaches in the league come from the East side of the division. So until they start rolling and we see them in those first couple of weeks, it's kind of tough to tell how things are going to go.
Well, with USF in particular, I thought, the fact that they're picked to finish first with a new head coach, Charlie Strong, I've told people throughout this offseason that I thought, no offense to Willie Taggart, but I thought Charlie Strong was an upgrade for USF, and I guess the media thought that too. What was your impression of Coach Strong when you talked to him?
I mean, he's serious. He's all business. He knows what he inherited. I mean, he even said it on our live show that Willie Taggart left him in a really great situation, and starting first and foremost with the quarterback that he inherits. So I think he knows that the potential they have this year, and that he's in a pretty good spot. But he's also, I mean, he comes from a really difficult situation. He comes from a high pressure situation. So in that sense, it's almost, I don't want to say it's easier by any stretch, but he's dealt with pressure. He's done, he's dealt with that. And I think his familiarity with the league, I mean, this isn't his first time coaching in the American. He coached Louisville in the first year of the league. So he has that familiarity. He's been in some of the most high pressure situations when it comes to fans, administration, and things of that nature. So I think he's in a pretty good spot, and he is not rebuilding. He inherited a pretty good culture, and so he has the tools to get it done. And it's definitely not going to be easy. I think, you look at the schedule, and out of conference, there may not be anybody that's like really, really sticking out. But I think in conference, I mean, we've seen it happen to USF the past couple of years. People have had high expectations for them, and we saw it happen last year. You lose the wrong game in the East Division, and all of a sudden you're out of that championship game. So they're going to have to play a really clean season.
Well, it happened to Houston last year. Houston beat Oklahoma and Louisville out of the conference, but yet they lost the wrong games in the division, including at Navy, and that was why they weren't even in the championship game last year. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think USF's challenge will be probably more in the conference than out of the conference. And what's fascinating is you're now like a veteran at these media days because there's so many new faces. You mentioned the coaches, the new coaches on the eastern side. That's not even including Major Applewhite in Houston. What's that like to see all the new faces? What were your impression on all the new faces and the new coaches as far as what they kind of stood out as you talked to them?
Yeah. So the great thing about this league, is that the quality of coaches that it attracts. And so that has led, to every single year having several new faces to meet, because people are going on to get really great jobs, and I'd call them dream jobs. So every year we've had a handful of new coaches since I've started working here a few years ago and covering this league. But I think the really interesting thing about the mix of coaches this year is the mix of new and up and coming, and the mix of tradition. So you have somebody like, a Major Applewhite, and you have somebody like Randy Edsall and Jeff Collins. I mean, there's so much of that, really, the modern, the players coach. I mean, Jeff Collins, I mean, the amount of energy he has, I was like blown away by him. I think he's so much fun. You can tell the players love him. He's got a ton of energy. He's hip, he's cool, he's got swag written all over him. Major Applewhite, I mean, he's a totally different energy than Tom Herman, but he's really comfortable with that. He just has a different style, but that, the players seem to have transitioned pretty smoothly, because it's not like they're getting a brand new head coach. This is a face that they're familiar with, but he's not trying to be Tom Herman, and he is very confident in his coaching style, which I think is great. And I also think that's really interesting. But then you have Randy Edsall, who's like old school. He's tradition. He has a totally different outlook than all the young guys out there. He's been doing this a really long time. So I just think that there's such a different mix of personalities, and it'll be really interesting to see how that translates to all those individual situations that they're inheriting.
Yeah, we here at UCF can tell you all about Jeff Collins, because he was actually the defensive coordinator when I was actually working at UCF, and that was he just stood out in the exact way that you mentioned. He's just high energy all the time. It was almost exhausting to keep up with him. I don't know how the players did it all those years, but he's going to be certainly, all these coaches are going to be challenges for UCF to go up against. I want to talk about the conference at large for a second, because Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American, laid out the big for lack of a term, branding that the conference is rolling out for this year, and that's the Power Six, right? Hashtag American Power, and P6, right? And I think that this was sort of the big story that for us in the media that came out of media days is that is the American Athletic Conference trying to set itself apart. In terms of we can go on and on about the levels in FBS college football, but the fact is the American is on a different playing field than the so-called Group of Five, which is where I think the American gets unfairly lumped into. And Mike Oresco, with his background, is trying to set the conference up smartly, I think. For media rights coming up in the next few years, and with the college football playoff. So, give us some of the background on this. What's the idea behind it? How did the idea come about? And what was sort of the play that you were sensing from the media when the conference made this push with the Power Six?
I think it dates back to last year, and Commissioner Rusko has certainly displayed a lot of leadership, and he's been really passionate about this campaign since day one. I think last year when, people started catching wind of it and it started rolling out, it came at a little bit of an awkward time. And, at the time, he wasn't afraid to acknowledge that and everything going on with the Big 12 and schools making their cases to be in it. And, he didn't shy away from that. He didn't, he still believed in the campaign. But I think once all of that kind of settled and, everybody kind of realized like, this is our league, and let's, make the most of it, and let's continue moving forward. So I think, this past year has been continuing to kind of just make people aware of the accomplishments that this league has had and continues to have. And, so rolling out this P6 campaign at Media Day, I actually think, it was, maybe at first people were unsure, but I think leaving there yesterday, it really caught a lot of attention. Everybody that I spoke with was like, Commissioner Oresco he's not ignoring the fact that there's, a financial gap between us, or the American, I should say, and, the 5 other conferences. But his messaging is that there is the will and the ability and the work ethic to get there, and that we will get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and that he knows that it has to be backed up on the field, and those results have to come along with it. So I think that overall it was received really, really well. And it's kind of like one of those things, like if you're going to do something, go all out with it. And it was everywhere. It was on every backdrop, every pop-up sign, lapel pins, lanyards, everything. And so it's an initiative, and I think that the conference has really gotten behind it. And I think that I don't think it'll be ignored this year. I think the media, it's in everybody's minds. And, even I think probably the thing that resonated with me the most was really neat that Vern Lundquist, he moderated the 2 coaches roundtables, and, he thinks that this conference deserves a spot in the college football playoff. And, that's somebody who has a major reputation in college football. And I think that that's kind of the point, is to try to get into that conversation. And one last thing I'll say about it is I asked Bill Hancock in that same conversation at the Clam Bake Monday night, I asked him, in the near future, could you see an American team playing in the college football playoff? And he said, absolutely. And, he said Houston was perfectly aligned to do it last year. So I think I think it is going in the direction that Commissioner Oresco wants it to go. And I think it was really well received.
Plus, it's happened before. When we had the BCS, UCF got in there. And, and in the first year of the American, I think that the other thing is, we as fans kind of look at is, well, it's that automatic bid that's going to be the thing. And whenever the contract, comes up for negotiation, there's been rumors flying around about, whether they'll expand the playoff from 4 teams to 6 or 8. And if they do, I think the American is in a pretty good spot to sort of reap the benefits of that. And I think the schools are too, because for example, if you take a look, you look at Houston, you look at UCF, these are schools that have that have more or less the academic and big state school profile of a lot of those other schools that you see in the so-called Power Five, and sort of fit right in
Jeff,
the profile.
It's the Power Six and Group of Four now. You got to get on board.
Okay, in the Power Six, and and but let's face it, and we know how good UConn has been, for the league in general. So I think it fits. But Eric, Eric, go ahead. Did you have a thing that you were going to add to?
No. I mean, I think it's well said there. I just wanted to ask her. She got a chance. You and Andy Gresh got a chance to talk to Mr. Shaq Griffin and Scott Frost, and I wanted your takeaway. This is the second year now you've talked to Scott Frost in media days, kind of compare from last year to this year, and then Shaq Griffin, he's got a pretty good personality, doesn't he?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. Let me start with Shaquem. That is the man right there. So like most fun interview I think I've ever done with a player. I mean, he is great. And whenever football comes to an end for him one day, he's got to be like a motivational speaker or something, because I was like so inspired by him throughout the whole conversation. It was actually really funny because at one point, I mean, Shaquem, he's talking and talking and talking, and we looked over to Coach Frost on the other end of the desk, and it was like, do you know, like, this guy is great. And it's like, he's like, yeah, basically like Shaquem, he does all the talking, and it actually ends up working out well for Coach Frost because, he is like, yeah, this
Coach
guy,
Frost
like,
is a pretty quiet chap. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Shaquem, he was awesome, super entertaining, and just like a really, really good guy. So that was awesome to get a chance to talk to him. And I think the biggest difference in talking to Coach Frost this year was, he's a quieter guy, but I think, you definitely sensed a greater sense of confidence that he has here in year two. I think he learned a lot about himself in year one. And but I think the one thing that stuck out to me was that, he's like, everyone's patting us on the back for having 6 wins last season because we were winless the year before. And he's like, I'm not happy with 6 wins. And so I just think he has a greater sense of confidence. He has really high standards for himself and his team and his program. And he's not going to stop until he gets there. So it was pretty cool. He definitely seems like he's taken it to the next level, and kind of found out a lot about himself the past year, and is going to, challenge himself to be a better coach even here in year 2. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, Shaq's the guy. He's cool.
Yes, he is. He's definitely a very good. You mentioned Vern Lundquist. You got to MC it. Andy Katz, you got to work with as part of the coverage this week. I think it speaks volume, as you mentioned, about these are big time media people that are involved and are covering the American Athletic Conference. I know you had media people that you interviewed as well, and the word is getting out there. And I think pretty much a consensus, the respect is there for the conference, and in particular, with Navy and football and the brand that they have brought, I think people have been well received. And with now the new addition in basketball, I know this will be a focus once we get to the basketball season, but Wichita State being added, it seems to be at a big approval rating. And I can sense when you've talked to Mr. Resco this week, he's definitely got very excited about where that's headed as far as the conference is concerned.
Yeah, well, first of all, how lucky am I? I got to host a live show with Andy Katz and Andy Gresh, who is just an outstanding personality in his own right. But Vern Lundquist moderating. We had him up on the set. I mean, we had Ralph Russo on our set during our live show. I mean, I got to work with some of the best in the business this week, and I feel really, really fortunate about that. But I mean, I think, one of the points that Andy Katz made was, the addition of a couple of these conferences, or a couple of these schools rather, in the past couple of years, and that being Navy and football and Wichita State and all the other sports. And they're 2 really, really impactful additions. Navy and football, they have a great following, they have great tradition, and they have, great talent on the football field, and it definitely bettered our football league. Wichita State men's basketball is going to speak for itself this year. They're going to be a preseason top 10 team, and it's going to, without question, strengthen our basketball league. So 2 just really, really strong additions. And it wasn't because, the commissioner will tell you it wasn't because the conference was looking to expand. These additions, they just made sense. And they both strengthened the league quite a bit. And so I think it's going to be really, really exciting. I mean, Wichita State, they're going to be unbelievable this year. They have really high expectations around them, but I think adding all their sports, they have a huge baseball tradition as well. So it's going to be an interesting addition to the league. And I think a really good one.
Last question for you, Haley. What's going to be the next storyline for the American in terms of, as a conference as a whole? Obviously whatever happens on the field, this year notwithstanding, but what are Commissioner Oresco and the powers that be up in Rhode Island looking ahead to and thinking about as this year is going to progress?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I guess as far best as I can tell, I think that, it's like two things. I think, looking ahead to, I guess the nearest things to come in the future, I think that this football season is really important. Anytime you launch a really aggressive branding campaign, you got to back it up. So I think that this football season is crucial in terms of achieving some of those results. Now, like one thing that was pointed out quite a bit at Media Day was that a lot of these Power 6 non-conference games, a lot of them come on the road. And so, you're playing games against, really tough opponents in their, in an away environment. And so that is really tough. So I think, the commissioner just hopes that, obviously to get some of these wins, but just to play really competitive games. And one thing that he alludes to quite a bit is when you look at things like the TV deal coming up in the future, is that a lot of these non-conference games that the American has had, on national television, the ratings have been better than some, conference games within the Big Ten. The ratings that, some of our teams get in their non-conference schedule are some of the best. And the fact that we can play on Thursday and Friday nights and get those eyes is really important. So I just think that achieving results, being really competitive all season long, and I think we have a couple of, more than a couple, I should say, really impactful players in the league this season. Quentin Flowers in the Heisman Trophy conversation. You have a player like Ed Oliver from Houston who's getting a ton of attention. And you have a guy like Cortland Sutton from SMU who could be a top pick in this coming NFL draft. So I think that just backing up this campaign is going to be really big for the conference this year, and continuing to brand ourselves in the best ways that we can. And in a lot of ways that does come through social and digital. So I think those are kind of, I would say, the two big things from my perspective coming up in the near future. But yeah.
Well, that's a good segue. Jeff's worried about what's down the road. I'm worried about what's coming up here in this fall. Why don't you tell the audience what they can expect on the American Digital Network coming this fall, whether it be as far as the football coverage and as well as the coverage in the other sports?
Well, I'm going to take vacation coming up on the Digital Network. Yeah, I promised you I'd be honest.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I know. It's okay though. I think people will survive. Now, there's.
Are you
no
sure the website's still going to be up? Let's be honest here.
It might crash. No. Well, it's been interesting with Media Day falling so early this year. There hasn't exactly been summer yet, but it's been kind of a nice thing because now get a little bit of a quiet time before football season kicks in. But yeah, gonna enjoy summer here in this beautiful region of New England a little bit, but just gearing up for football season. And you know what? I don't really know exactly what's next, other than the fact that I know we have a ton of new plans for. We're going to be incorporating a ton of new live events this fall. We'll be back again live at Basketball Media Day and our football championship game. But this year we plan on just kind of kicking our coverage up to the next level with our in-studio stuff from Providence. I know we want to get athletes, coaches, members of the media on Skype a lot in our studio and get pretty interactive there on a weekly basis. We're going to redo the legendary show called The Rise this year. We're going to be coming to you on a daily basis instead of a weekly longer format. So that's probably one of the biggest changes, I would say. coming this fall is just more frequent coverage, shorter format things, and just try to reach as many people and hit as many stories as we can. But I think you'll see a lot more live components from us this year, especially at big events. That seems to be pretty well received, and we're still learning, but I think each event has gotten better and better, so that's been pretty cool.
Well, you do a great job with it, Haley, and we're looking forward to seeing more work from you and more stuff from the American as the season progresses. Where can people reach out to you on social?
Pretty simple, at Hali Oughton. And the trick is, though, that you have to be able to spell the first and last name, neither of which are easy, because my first name looks like Hallie. So HALIOUHTON. Or excuse me, OUGHT. Oh, see, that's how hard it is to spell. I can't even do it, and I'm pretty good at spelling it. Hali Oughton for the American Athletic Conference, host, reporter, media extraordinaire. Haley, thanks for spending some time. Now go hit the Cape. Thanks a lot, guys. It was great as always, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon.
All right, thanks again to Haley, and don't forget, you can reach out to her on Twitter at Hali Oughton, and just keep it locked on the American Digital Network on theamerican.org, and also on YouTube. Just search for the American Athletic Conference on YouTube, where all the video content is available. And the American, and again, the American.org, everything is. They do such a good job with the digital coverage throughout the site. You know, we've seen that. You know, with our work with the American Digital Network, and certainly Media Days were no different. So, real quick, Eric, I wanted to get your word on the preseason polls, because USF, like we said, picked to finish second. Unanimous pick to finish. USF picked to finish first. UCF picked to finish second in the Eastern Division. The Bulls get all 30 first-place votes in the division. UCF is second, followed by Temple, Cincinnati, East Carolina, UConn. In the West, Memphis is the favorite, followed by Houston, Navy, Tulsa, SMU, and Tulane. You think they got it right?
The West is tough, to be honest. That division is loaded.
I was, but by the way, sorry to dive in there, but I was really surprised that Houston didn't get the first place vote.
I wasn't. I mean, Tom Herman's not there, so there's a question about Major Applewhite. Remember, Greg Ward graduated at quarterback, so you don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be in Houston. We think it'll be Kyle Allen, but it may not be. We don't know. So I think there's questions there, whereas Memphis returns their people. They return their quarterback. And they return, Coach Norvell in his second year. I think people liked how they finished the year. They're the pick in the West. I think they're really good. I mean, here's the thing that jumps out. I don't know if people realize, but UCF on paper right now would play the two best teams in the conference, the best team in the West and the best team in the East, the two teams that were picked in the preseason. They play Memphis in week 2 of the season, and of course USF to end the year. So, and Haley brought up a good point about Navy. Navy is always going to get overlooked. I don't think people ever, it's tough to kind of figure out how good they are, because they're really based on their scheme. They're based on the triple option. So you don't really know, okay, is it the system or is it the talent level? And it's more about the system. So Navy always knows how to play well. They won the league last year. It came down to the final game of the season the year before against Houston. If people forget, Houston beat Navy. That was what it came down to. But it's
and they're on the schedule too.
I know. I would know
on the road.
I would know, because I just booked my flight. I'm going up there for that game, so I'm looking forward to it. So, which tells you, to the point that we talked about in the interview with Haley there, Jeffrey, is Navy's a brand, right? And I remember how people kind of were skeptical about Navy coming in as a football only deal, and I think they have more than provided a lot for the league. And you've told me this, and a lot of people have told me this. When I've told people that I'm going to the Navy game, they're like, "Oh, you're going to love it. It's one of the great atmospheres in football. It's a great place. You got to check it out." And that's what it provides to the conference. And so I'm looking forward to that. But the West is stacked. And I think the East is I think people kind of don't know what to do there, because there's so much newness in the coaching front and even player-wise that I think USF's the easy choice based on what they have returning. UCF, certainly questions, as we'll get into as we get closer to the season. They do lose guys in the secondary and the linebacking core. Offensive line, are they going to get better? Quarterback play. But, Cincinnati's starting over with Luke Fickell. Jeff Collins' first year at Temple. You got, Edsel at Connecticut, on and on. Scotty Montgomery at East Carolina is in his second year. So it feels to me, and I think you agree with this because I know you hate preseason polls. we're a year ago at this time, I think everybody was talking about Houston, right? They're going to go back to back. They could be a playoff team. They didn't even win their division. So,
and it was looking real good there at the beginning too.
It did. They beat Oklahoma to open the year, and you're like, oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. It didn't happen. I feel like it's going to be one of those years that it's going to be I think there's going to be a team or two that surprises people and either wins the division or competes for the division title that maybe we're not talking about. And I'm sure many of us are hoping that maybe that UCF is in that category, that maybe UCF's the surprise, right? Because I feel like, based on watching the media day, if anybody but USF wins the East, I think people would be surprised.
Is surprised the right word?
Caught off guard? I don't know, but
yeah.
I mean, everybody was pumping them up. That's all I'm saying. Now, maybe people, once they see teams play, will change their tune. But there's clearly, that's the one thing everybody agreed over there, is that USF's the clear team to beat. Whether I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, but that's the reality. And I think part of it is because of Quentin Flowers and the returning guys that they have. But yeah,
they are the favorite. They are the favorite. I don't know if they're quite the head and shoulders favorite that everyone claims that they are. I do think that there's going to be some regression under a new head coach, just based on the nature of that situation. But I don't think that they're going to come that far back to the pack. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if on Thanksgiving weekend that War on I-4 game is for the East Division title.
Well, I think that would certainly be exciting. I'm sure in the league offices when you schedule it.
That's what they want, right?
Right. That would make a lot of sense. Certainly got a long ways to go. You mentioned, let's break down the UCF schedule. Now that we know the preseason poll, and take it for whatever it's worth, and I mentioned this earlier, UCF plays Memphis. That's their conference opener. That's the Western pick. Mm-hmm. Might be the best team in the league. If you don't think USF's the best team in the league, I think people would tell you it's probably Memphis. They got a lot of tremendous talent coming back. I think we're going to learn a lot about UCF season in that game, by the way. But so you look at that game. You look at going to Navy, for example.
Yep,
so
that's going to be a tough game.
That's two tough Western games. I mean, you look at the teams they're playing out from the West, and then, oh, by the way, you got to go to SMU, which a lot of people think are improved. There's people that think that that SMU is too low in the preseason poll. I think when you look at that, might be the key to winning the East. Might be to steal a game or two against those Western opponents and then beat those teams in the East head to head. I think that's what it's going to come down to from the UCF standpoint or USF standpoint. I'm actually trying to look up right now, Jeff. I want to compare what USF has to play in the West compared to what UCF has to play in the West, because a lot of times people forget this with the schedules. You don't play everybody in the other division.
Yeah, that's true. USF's Western slate includes Houston and Tulsa.
Tulsa has a new quarterback. Haley alluded to that. They got a new quarterback. I mean, they won 10 games last year. I think they're under the radar myself as well. I kind of agree with her. Houston, again, that's new quarterback situation, but that'll be interesting. So they got Houston, and Tulsa, and we'll see how USF
and Tulane. I think is Tulane's in the West, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's at Tulane. That's the team that probably the consensus is they're in last place. So I think you could argue on paper anyway that USF benefits from having Tulane on the schedule there. And obviously they will benefit from the fact that they go to UConn in September. They don't have to go in November. Right. I think that USF caught a break in that. They host Temple at home. They
basically have no cold weather games.
They host Houston. They do host Tulsa. One of the things that's going up against UCF here is UCF's got to go to Navy. UCF's got to go to SMU. UCF's got to go to Temple in November, as you mentioned, whereas USF, really the way the road games broke out, you nailed it. They don't have any cold games. They end the year at UCF, they play at Tulane, and they play at East Carolina in September. I think that's a very, that's why I think a lot of people like USF just as much as not, if not for the talent or the roster, it's because of the schedule. I think they've got a very obviously manageable schedule. Non-conference, to be honest, is kind of a joke. I mean,
their non-conference schedule is a complete catastrophe. They start the season at San Jose State a week before the start of the season proper, Saturday, August 26th. They are home for Stony Brook, which I didn't even know had a football team. They have a Friday night game at home against Illinois, which whoop-de-doo, you're playing a Big Ten team. Oh, you're playing Illinois.
Lovie Smith, baby. Lovie Smith coming back. Yeah.
And then on Saturday, October the 14th, in the middle of their conference slate, they've got UMass at home. So,
no, I mean, look, they've got a much easier schedule than UCF. But again, UCF's got to go. They host Memphis. That's a tough game at home. Got to go to Cincinnati. Luke Fickell. We don't know what to expect there, but that's on the road.
Well, the other thing too, I was going to mention about USF too. Sorry, Eric, was. Yeah. In between that Tulane road game on October 21st for USF and the War on I-4 game on Black Friday, they've got 3 games at home in a row, Cincinnati, Houston, and Tulsa.
Right, and that could be their toughest stretch.
And they're all at home.
Exactly. So the schedule's broken right for them, whereas UCF, they got some challenges. Got to go to Cincinnati. Got to go to Navy. Got to go to SMU.
You got Georgia Tech at home, and then at Maryland back-to-back.
Right, in the non-conference. So it's just not – it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, as we'll get into it here, but between now and the opening kickoff against FIU, when we get to that date on opening night on that Thursday the 31st, they're going to have to improve in some areas, in particular in the offensive side and the offensive line. Got to get much better to provide the running game and, again, get better quarterback play. Improvement, I would say. Get improvement, which is what you always expect, especially when you have a young player in that position. And obviously you're going to have some young guys in the linebacking core and the secondary are going to have to step up early. So it's a challenging schedule, but on the other hand, I think that could pay off for UCF later in the year because they'll be battle-tested, whereas some people might question whether USF will be battle-tested by the time they get to that game in Orlando. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's kind of the interesting plot lines as we kind of count down to kickoff. But I'm just happy that we're talking about it in general, and soon enough we'll hopefully start to get some answers. But I do think, and I'm going to keep – I've said this when the schedule came out, and I'm going to say it again – as we get closer to that Memphis game, September 9th, I think, Jeff, will learn a lot about the 2017 season and where it's headed. Because you'll learn a lot. Because that's a heck of a football game. And that's why I'm pleased that UCF is now playing on that Thursday night beforehand. Because you want to have to be prepared for that talented Memphis team. And then you mentioned that with Georgia Tech and Maryland, Georgia Tech at home and then Maryland on the road. So September will be – we'll learn a lot in September, probably more than maybe in past years.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And that's going to be kind of a real trial by fire because I look at those first 4 games before you play Maine at home, that sort of FCS matchup with Maine. Let's not sleep on FIU in their first game under Butch Davis either. All right? You know that they're going to come out jacked up for that game. We know that, obviously there were some, talent problems with FIU, but we're going to find out, I think, real quick, were the issues that they had talent-related or coaching-related. So there's that. Yes, you start your first 3 at home, but like you said, yes, that Memphis game on Saturday, September 9th, second game of the season, you're going to find out real quick where you stand. And I still go back to the fact that, it's at this quirk of the schedule actually works out for UCF, where you play Georgia Tech before you play Navy. So you're going to get a look at that triple option offense once in a non-conference game against Paul Johnson in Georgia Tech. Paul Johnson coached at Navy before he went to Georgia Tech, and Ken Niumatalolo took over for him in Annapolis. So at least your defense gets to look at that scheme once before you play what I think could be a very big conference road game in Annapolis in late October. So that actually works out for UCF in UCF's favor. Not a lot of stuff in the schedule does. That does.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to prepare for a triple option. I don't think people understand that because you don't practice that. You don't run that offense.
Right.
You don't see it often.
It's like playing a different sport when you're on defense and you're playing a triple option team.
Right. And as a defense, you only have a few days to prepare for it with practice and hours, and it's just a very tricky thing. So the fact that they got two opponents in the schedule that have that offense, that will pay off for them the second time around against Navy. I think they'll be much more prepared for the Navy game. Not that they wouldn't be for Georgia Tech, but any mistakes and errors that they will make in the Georgia Tech, they'll kind of be much more comfortable going into the Navy game because they would have gone through the experience of playing that style already. Granted, It's on the road and all that, but I agree 100%. I do think in a way that does benefit them. Whereas and it's a month apart too, so that helps as well. That you kind of can use that tape, and I'm sure that you'll take those notes moving a month in advance.
All right, so we'll be keeping track of that as the off season continues with summer practice coming up right around the corner here. As once again, media days are wrapped up for the American Athletic Conference, and we can now smell football season right around the corner. All right, Elo, let's put a bow on this thing. What do you got coming up this week?
Well, I think UCF fans will like this coming up, actually. If you go to I do some softball content. I host a podcast and write on fastpitchnews.com, which is a softball site. Coming up on Monday, it'll come out, and we're going to actually do a future episode here on this. I interviewed recently Linnea Goodman, former UCF softball player, just played on the Swedish national team in the Euro Championship, so I had a chance to talk to her about that. We also reflected about her UCF softball career, so that interview will be out, and I know we're going to recap it and break it down on a future episode here as well, as we talk about some of the storylines off season. Of course, on that, I just had a chance recently to catch up with Shelby Turnier, talk to her. She's doing very well, playing the Bandit season right now. But no, it's still news going on. So yeah, look for that coming out in the next week or so, depending on when you're hearing this episode. It'll be out on the Monday, the 24th of July. So, but we will actually recap that on a future episode here as well. So be on the lookout for that because I know Jeff's got he's gonna be drilling me with questions coming in that episode. I just know it, so I'll be prepared for that. But yeah, that's kind of what's coming up in the near future there as far as I have working, and you can obviously get the details on Twitter at Eric Lopez Elo.
Good stuff, and you can follow me at Jeff_Sharon. You can follow us at UCF_Banneret, where we will continue to have summer sessions going through. Make sure you check out some of our other summer sessions. We've had Jermaine Taylor, a two-parter with Al Miller that was really amazing. Make sure you take a look at that. We had Amanda Cromwell from a former UCF women's soccer coach on there talking about Team USA, Tony DeChico. So far, things have been going pretty well. So, and as like we said, as we get closer to football, we'll have a bunch of, we'll have a number of different fun things coming up right around the corner. Make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, as well as SoundCloud, Google Play, and TuneIn. And don't forget to leave us a rating as well on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing. And if you have any questions, by the way, or if you have any suggestions for interviews, our new email address is up. And it is blackandgoldbanneret at gmail.com. Blackandgoldbanneret at gmail.com. So fire off a message to us. Let us know how we're doing and what you want to hear. So that'll do it for us for this summer session. Thanks again to Hali Oughton as well from the American Athletic Conference. And thanks to you, Eric Lopez. I'm Jeff Sharon. We will catch you on our next Black and Gold Banneret Summer Sessions.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.